I was halfway through sorting invoices when I heard the knock. Not a polite one, a sharp, deliberate rap on the glass door that separated my desk from the rest of the office. I looked up and saw Dominic Reyes standing there in his tailored suit, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. "Marisol, may I see you in my office?" he asked. My stomach tightened. I nodded, saved the spreadsheet, and followed him. He closed the door behind me, slowly as if sealing the room. The blinds were already drawn. The air smelled like cologne and fresh paper. Dominic didn't sit. He stood by the window, one hand in his pocket, the other tracing the edge of the sill like he was organizing his thoughts. "I have a business proposition for you," he said finally. I blinked. "Excuse me." He turned to face me fully. "I've been in business long enough to know that appearances matter. To investors, to competitors, and to the board. They want to see stability, a family, a home, the image of a man who has it all together." I didn't move. "I want you to be my wife," he said. So plainly it took me a moment to register the words. "Your what?" "On paper," he clarified almost impatiently. "For 2 years. We'd sign a legal agreement. Only my attorney and I would know. You, me, and your son Mateo," he paused. "You'd play the role of my family. Attend events. Smile for pictures. Appear to be a happy unit. In return, I will compensate you generously. Enough to take care of you and your son for the foreseeable future." I stared at him like he'd grown horns. "This is absurd," I said. He nodded, as if expecting my reaction. "I understand. It's not a typical offer, but it's an opportunity. You're a beautiful young woman, intelligent, hardworking. People will believe it. It's mutually beneficial." I stood frozen. "Why me?" His mouth curved, but not into a smile. "Because you don't ask questions you already know the answer to." My legs were trembling. I felt them under me, threatening to give out. I couldn't tell if I was insulted or terrified. Maybe both. Dominic walked to the door, opened it, and held it for me. "I'll need your answer by tomorrow." I stepped out, stunned. The door clicked shut behind me. My coworkers looked up, then quickly looked away. I walked back to my desk in a daze, my hands suddenly unsure of what to do. I couldn't focus on numbers anymore. Not after that. That night, as I tucked Mateo into bed and watched him clutch his favorite worn-out giraffe, the question gnawed at me. What would it take for a woman to sell her last name to a man she barely knew, and could I become her? The night after Dominic's proposal, I couldn't sleep. I lay there, listening to the soft hum of the baby monitor, Mateo's breathing steady and small on the other end. My mind wouldn't stop spinning. I kept seeing Dominic's face, hearing the words again. "I want you to be my wife." Not for love, not for dreams, but for image. And yet, something in me wasn't angry, just tired. Tired of pretending like life had ever given me a choice. I thought back to a different man once, a different kind of promise. Dylan Brooks. He was the first man I ever loved, the only one really. He had that effortless charm, all sun-bleached hair and lazy grins, and he said my name like it mattered. I was 19, still half a girl. He was 24 and reckless. When I told him I was pregnant, his smile vanished. His first words weren't, "Are you sure?" or "We'll figure it out." They were, "You did this on purpose, didn't you?" I didn't even know what to say. I hadn't trapped him. We were careless once, just once. I missed a pill after being sick. I told him that, but Dylan didn't hear it. He heard the end of his freedom. He pulled his wallet out, tossed $200 bills on the counter, and said, "Take care of it." I couldn't breathe. "You're not serious," I whispered. He shrugged. "It's your body, your problem. Don't drag me into this." I begged him. God, I was stupid enough to beg. I said we could make it work. I said we could be a family. He laughed in my face. "We're barely making rent, Marisol. You think we can raise a kid?" And then he was gone. I hid the pregnancy for almost 3 months. I wore baggy clothes, faked a stomach flu. But morning sickness doesn't lie forever. One afternoon, my dad came home from his second shift and started frying fish. The smell hit me like a punch. I bolted to the bathroom and threw up everything I hadn't eaten. When I came out, my father was waiting at the door, eyes worried. "Are you sick?" he asked. I broke. I collapsed into his arms, sobbing so hard I could barely breathe. "I'm so sorry, Papa," I cried. I didn't mean to. I didn't know what to do. He didn't yell. He didn't scold. He just held me while I shook, his rough hand stroking my back. "Don't say sorry, Mija," he whispered. "You're not alone. We'll figure it out." He was the first person to make me believe I could survive it. The next day, we told Mama. That was harder. Rosa wasn't the type to accept surprises, especially not the kind that ruin reputations. She called me reckless, foolish, said no man would want a girl like me after this. But she didn't throw me out. She cried when no one was looking. She made sure I ate. She rubbed my back when I couldn't sleep. That was her version of love, quiet and sharp at the edges. Mateo was born on a Wednesday afternoon in late October. My dad missed his shift to be in the delivery room with me. When the nurse placed Mateo in my arms, tiny and warm and loud, I saw my father cry for the first time. 3 months later, he was gone. A heart attack at work. No warning. Just a call from the ER, and a silence I'd never known before. Everything after that felt like walking through a fog. Bills piled up. Mama sold her jewelry. I went back to work too soon. Every diaper and bottle felt heavier without Papa S. hands helping hold the world together. And now, Dominic Reyes was offering me money to pretend like I had a husband. I looked over at Mateo's crib. He was dreaming, one hand curled into a fist. I used to dream like that too once. I wasn't sure when exactly I stopped. By morning, I still hadn't made a decision. But the world didn't wait for me to figure out my life. Mateo woke up crying at 5 a.m., hungry and wet. The formula can was half empty. The bills sat unopened on the kitchen counter like quiet threats. Mama stood at the stove in her robe, flipping tortillas, her eyes tired in the way only mothers understand. "You didn't sleep," she said without looking at me. "No," I admitted. She nodded, as if she'd expected that answer. "Your boss," she said, "he give you any trouble?" I hesitated. "He offered me something strange." Rosa turned off the burner. "Strange like what?" "I don't know how to explain it. A deal. A contract." Her brows furrowed. "What kind of contract?" Before I could answer, Mateo let out a loud shriek from his high chair. I jumped to feed him. Mama didn't push for more, but she was watching me. That afternoon, while Mateo napped, I sat at the kitchen table and opened my checkbook. What stared back at me was reality. We couldn't keep going like this. I wasn't proud of what I was about to do. I didn't feel powerful. I felt like someone stuck between drowning and grabbing the wrong lifeboat. When I walked into Dominic's office the next day, he didn't look surprised to see me. He gestured for me to sit, then shut the door behind me like he had before. "I'll do it," I said. His expression didn't change, but something in his shoulders shifted. "Good," he said. "There are conditions, of course." "I have conditions, too," I cut in. My voice didn't shake this time. No physical relationship. No expectations outside of appearances. Mateo stays with me at all times. I don't want anyone else knowing about the arrangement, not even my mother. Dominic nodded. "Agreed. I'll have my attorney draw up the documents." It was surreal, like I was signing over not just 2 years of my life, but the last pieces of whatever story I thought I'd live. We had the civil ceremony the following Friday. No dress, no flowers, no guests. Just signatures and silence. Dominic handed me a check afterward, more than I'd ever seen in my life, and said, "You'll move in by Monday. A driver will pick you up." That weekend, I packed Mateo's things with trembling hands. Mama helped, but I could tell she didn't understand why we were leaving so suddenly. I didn't have the words to explain it, or maybe I was just too ashamed to try. On Monday morning, the car pulled up to the curb. Black, sleek, too shiny for our dusty street. I kissed Mama goodbye, holding her a little too long. She hugged Matteo tightly, her whisper pressed into his curls. When I stepped into that car, holding my son, I didn't feel like a bride or a wife. I felt like someone crossing a line she couldn't uncross. But Matteo giggled when we pulled away. And in that moment, I told myself I could survive anything as long as he was in my arms. The Reyes estate wasn't a house. It was a statement, set behind a wrought iron gate and surrounded by manicured hedges. It stood tall and pristine like it had never known a day of mess or noise. I remember clutching Matteo tighter as we stepped through the front doors, afraid he'd break something just by breathing. Dominic wasn't home when we arrived. His housekeeper, Elena, gave me a polite smile and showed me to our quarters. I quickly realized that meant an entire wing of the house, 3 rooms, a private bathroom, a sitting area, even a small nursery already set up with new furniture, fresh paint, and a mobile hanging from the ceiling. I should have felt lucky. Instead, I felt displaced, like a guest in someone else's carefully staged life. That first night, I barely slept. Matteo did, curled up in his crib like none of this fazed him. I lay on the bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about the woman I used to be, the one who imagined love before marriage, not marriage before breakfast. The days that followed settled into a strange rhythm. I still worked part-time at the company, reporting to a different manager, keeping my head down. Dominic and I rarely saw each other during the day, but he insisted we eat dinner together twice a week, in full view of the staff. At the table, we played our roles. He'd ask about my work, I'd smile and tell him Matteo was teething. We'd clink glasses for no reason. It was like rehearsing for a play neither of us wanted to perform. But then there were the moments that caught me off guard. Once, I walked into the nursery and found a brand new rocking chair beside the crib, something I'd mentioned in passing during dinner. No note, no comment, just there. Another time, I caught Dominic standing in the hallway, watching through the slightly open door as I sang Matteo to sleep. He didn't say a word. When I turned, startled, he stepped back and disappeared like he hadn't meant to be caught. And it wasn't just the big things. It was how he never corrected me in front of staff, never asked questions about my past, never pushed. He gave me space, respect, and that made it worse. Because kindness is dangerous when you're lonely. And I was lonelier than I wanted to admit. One evening, Mama came to visit. She brought tamales wrapped in foil and asked me 3 times if I was okay. I said yes. She didn't believe me, but she kissed Matteo goodnight and didn't press. After she left, I stood on the balcony outside my room, the city lights flickering in the distance. And I realized something that scared me more than anything else. This didn't feel like pretending anymore. It felt like waiting, like something real might actually grow in the quiet between us. And I didn't know if I was ready for that. It was the night of the gallery event, our first real public appearance as Mr. and Mrs. Reyes. Dominic had sent a dress earlier that day, folded neatly in a box lined with tissue paper. Midnight blue, satin, modest neckline, soft pleats. Classic. Beautiful. A note lay on top in his handwriting. You'll look stunning in this. I almost didn't wear it. But curiosity, or something dangerously close to hope, made me slip it on. When I came down the stairs, Dominic was waiting by the front door, adjusting his cufflinks. He looked up, and for the first time since we met, he didn't speak. Just stared. Too much. I asked, smoothing the fabric self-consciously. He blinked. No, he said, his voice lower than usual. You look exactly right. The event was held at a private studio on the River Walk. The moment we stepped out of the car, cameras clicked. People smiled too widely. Champagne flutes clinked on silver trays. I clung to Dominic's arm not for show, but because I needed something solid in all that noise. He played his part effortlessly, hand at the small of my back, nodding at investors, making polite jokes with gallery owners. But every time our eyes met, something lingered. Not performance, not duty, something neither of us could name. When the room finally emptied out a little, He guided me to the back patio, where soft jazz floated through the air and the city sparkled beyond the glass railing. "I thought you hated events like these," I said. He shrugged. "I do, but they help me stay in business." "And I help you stay believable," I added, half joking. Dominic looked at me, serious now. "You do more than that, Marisol. You make me seem human." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. On the way home, the silence between us wasn't awkward, it was charged, electric. And when he pulled the car into the driveway and parked, neither of us moved. "I wasn't always this way," he said finally, his hand still on the steering wheel. "Cold, calculated. There was a time when I believed in things like love, family, loyalty. But life has a way of breaking those beliefs." He didn't say more. He didn't have to. I understood. "I thought Dylan loved me," I said, surprising myself with how easily the name came out. "He promised we'd build something together. Then the second life got messy, he disappeared." Dominic turned to me. "That man's a fool." I gave a sad smile. Sometimes I wonder if I was the fool, for believing him. A beat passed, then another. "I don't think you're foolish," he said. "I think you're stronger than you realize." And before I could respond, he leaned forward, just slightly, just enough for me to feel his breath brush against mine. The kiss was soft, hesitant, like both of us were testing the edge of something fragile. When we pulled apart, he didn't say a word, just looked at me, waiting. "I don't know what this is," I whispered. "Neither do I," he admitted, "but I'd like to find out if you're willing." I nodded, and that night, for the first time since my father died, I slept without dreaming of loss. The invitation came in an ivory envelope with gold script. A birthday gala for one of Dominic's longtime business partners. Lavish, formal, and very public. I didn't want to go. I told myself it was because Matteo had a mild fever, or because Mama had been tired, or because the dress Dominic picked out was a little too glamorous for a woman who still did her own laundry. But the truth was, I didn't want to ruin the quiet peace that had started to settle between us. Still, I went. I wore the green silk gown, pinned up my hair, and walked beside Dominic like I belonged in that world, even if I knew I didn't. The ballroom was grand, crystal chandeliers, velvet curtains, the kind of place where the air itself smelled expensive. People smiled at us, commented on how lovely we looked together. I'd gotten better at playing the role. Too good, maybe. We were standing near the bar when I felt it. That old, sinking feeling in my gut. The one that used to come when I checked my phone and saw no reply. The one that whispered, "Something's about to hurt." And then I saw him, Dylan, across the room, dressed in a sleek suit, laughing at something a blonde woman said. His hair was shorter, his face a little older, but I knew that smirk. That easy, careless confidence. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My legs turned to ice. I didn't even notice when I reached for Dominic's arm and held on too tight. He looked down at me. "What's wrong?" "We have to go," I whispered. "Please, Dominic. I can't stay here." He didn't ask why. He didn't question me in front of anyone. He just nodded, placed his hand over mine, and said, "Excuse us." We were halfway to the exit when I heard my name. "Marisol." That voice. I froze. I turned slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs. Dylan stood there, drink in hand, smiling like we were old friends bumping into each other at the grocery store. "Wow. I wasn't sure it was really you. You look incredible." I didn't speak. Dominic stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Is there a problem?" Dylan extended a hand. Dylan Brooks, an old friend. "Dominic Reyes," my husband said calmly. "Her husband." Dylan's smile faltered for just a moment before it returned, smug and amused. "Husband, huh? Didn't see that coming." "I'm sure you didn't," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "We were just leaving." Dylan leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You never told me, is the kid mine?" Dominic stepped in immediately. "That's enough." Dylan held up his hands in mock surrender. "Just asking." I mean, it would explain why you looked so panicked when you saw me. I grabbed Dominic's hand and pulled him away. We left the gala without another word. In the car, I sat stiffly, staring out the window. My hands were trembling. Dominic didn't speak until we were halfway home. "Do you want to talk about it?" he asked softly. I shook my head. "Not yet." He nodded. "Whenever you're ready." When we got home, Mateo was already asleep. I stood by his crib longer than usual, watching his chest rise and fall. My heart felt like it had been split open again, not because of Dylan, but because I realized how far I'd come. I wasn't that girl anymore, the one who begged, who waited for calls that never came. And if Dylan thought he could come back and shake the life I'd rebuilt, he was about to learn how wrong he was. He waited for 2 days before reaching out. Dylan, of course. A text short and smug, "We should talk. I have a right to know." I stared at the screen for a long time. The old me would have panicked. The old me would have avoided, denied, maybe even hoped he'd disappear again. But I wasn't her anymore. I didn't tell Dominic I was going. Not yet. I knew he'd worry, maybe even try to stop me. But this was something I needed to do on my own. We met at a coffee shop near downtown, neutral and noisy enough that I wouldn't feel cornered. Dylan was already seated when I arrived, wearing sunglasses indoors, sipping something expensive. He stood when he saw me, arms open like we were long-lost friends. I didn't hug him. "Marisol," he said like he owned my name. "Damn, you really went all in, huh? Fancy house, powerful husband. You look comfortable." "I'm not here to entertain whatever story you've made up in your head," I said, sliding into the chair across from him. "Say what you came to say." He leaned back. "I want to know if he's mine." "Mateo." "No, you're sure?" "Yes." He laughed once, bitterly. "You always were a good liar when you needed to be." My hands stayed folded. "Come. You left. Not just me, but him. Before he even existed. You made your choice the day you threw cash on the counter and told me not to drag you into my problems." Dylan leaned in, lowering his voice. "I was scared. Young. We both were." "I was 19, I said. "And I stayed. I raised our son. Alone. With no help. No phone calls. Not even a damn apology." He looked away. "I'm trying now." "It's too late," I said softly. "Mateo has a father, one who sings him to sleep and holds his hand when he's sick and shows up every single day. You don't get to walk in and claim him now just because you're curious or bored or jealous." For a moment, the mask cracked. Dylan blinked, and I thought maybe, just maybe, he finally understood what he'd lost. "I'd like to meet him," he said, quieter this time. "No," I replied. Then I paused. "But I'll let you see him. Once. From a distance. For closure. For both of us." His shoulders dropped, almost in relief. He nodded. "Okay." I left before he could say anything else. The air outside felt different. Lighter. Not because I forgave him, but because I didn't need to carry him anymore. When I got home, Dominic was on the porch with Mateo in his lap, reading The Very Hungry Caterpillar for the 5th time. Mateo looked up when he saw me, grinned, and wriggled down to run into my arms. Dominic stood too. "Everything okay?" I nodded, blinking back unexpected tears. "Better than okay." He touched my arm. "Did you tell him?" "I told him the truth," I said, and then I let him go. Dominic reached up and brushed a strand of hair from my face. "You didn't need me to protect you, Marisol. You never have." "I know," I whispered, smiling through the ache in my chest. "But it's nice to know you would have tried." And that night, as I watched Mateo sleep between us, his head on Dominic's chest, their breathing in sync, I realized something simple but powerful. I had chosen this life, not out of fear, but out of love. And for the first time, it felt like it had chosen me back. The next Sunday, Dominic invited us to the vineyard outside the city. I didn't even know he owned one. He said it had belonged to his grandfather, now mostly used for corporate retreats and charity dinners. But that day, it was just us. He'd set up a table under the sycamores, Mateo's favorite snacks already waiting, a blanket laid out for him to nap on later. Mama came too, after much persuasion. She didn't trust fancy places or fancy people, but when she saw how gently Dominic handed Mateo his juice box, even she softened. Lunch was quiet, almost ordinary. Mateo fed birds with crumbs. Mama and Dominic talked about the price of good tomatoes. I sat there, watching the sun play through the trees, wondering when this life had started to feel like mine. After dessert, Dominic stood, reached into his pocket. "Can I say something?" he asked. I nodded, unsure. He turned toward Mama first. "Senora Rosa, thank you for raising a daughter strong enough to challenge me, and wise enough to forgive me when I get it wrong." Mama raised an eyebrow, but said nothing, which, from her, was basically applause. Then Dominic faced me. His voice changed, softer. "I once believed family was something you were born into, not something you could build. But you proved me wrong, Marisol. You and Mateo, you made me believe again." He pulled out a small velvet box, opened it. Inside wasn't just a ring. It was a promise. "I don't want a 2-year contract anymore," he said. "I don't want photos or investors or appearances. I want mornings, diaper changes, sick days, holidays. I want this, us, for real, for as long as you'll have me." I couldn't speak. The world blurred for a moment. Mama had gone completely still, her fingers clutching her rosary tight. Mateo just giggled and clapped because he thought something exciting was happening. "Dominic," I whispered, "are you sure?" He nodded. Never been more sure of anything in my life. I looked at the ring, then at his eyes, and I said the only thing that felt honest. "Yes." He slipped it on my finger, not like a man sealing a deal, but like someone choosing home. Mama wiped her eyes, muttering something about allergies. Mateo demanded another juice box, and the sun dipped lower through the leaves as if even the sky wanted to bless that moment. We didn't celebrate with champagne. We didn't make grand speeches. We just stayed there, laughing, barefoot in the grass. And for the first time in my entire life, I didn't feel like I was pretending to belong. I did belong. We all did. Because family isn't something you wait for. It's something you choose, over and over again, even when it doesn't make sense, even when it scares you, especially then. Autumn came quietly that year. The vineyard turned golden. Mateo started preschool, and Mama began teaching him her favorite lullabies in Spanish. Our mornings were slower now. Cereal bowls clinking, tiny sneakers always missing one sock. Dominic, still half asleep, pressing a kiss to my temple before heading out, mumbling something about meetings he didn't want to attend. And me, standing at the kitchen sink, coffee in hand, watching the light hit our backyard just right. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. I still had bad days. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, thinking I was 19 again, alone and terrified. But Dominic was always there, his hand searching for mine under the covers. And somehow that was enough. One Saturday, I took Mateo to the farmer's market alone. Dominic had a call, and Mama had stayed behind to make tamales. As we wandered between stalls, Mateo's small fingers wrapped around mine, he asked, "Mama, did I used to not have a papa?" I stopped, not because I didn't know the answer, but because I wanted to give him the right one. "You always had someone who loved you," I said, "and now you have someone who chooses you every day." He thought about that, then nodded, satisfied, and pointed to a jar of honey he wanted. When we got home, Dominic was waiting at the door. He took the bag from my arms, kissed Mateo's forehead, and asked if we wanted to go for a walk before dinner. It hit me then how far we'd come. From a deal made in desperation to a life built on choice. From fear to love. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the trees, Dominic wrapped an arm around my waist and pulled me close. "Are you happy?" he asked. I didn't answer right away. I looked at Mateo running ahead. his laughter echoing through the vineyard. I looked at Mama, sitting on the porch, humming. I looked at Dominic, the man who once offered protection, now offering his whole heart. And I said simply, yes. Because I was. Not because everything was easy, not because the past had vanished, but because I had survived it. And somehow, in the ruins of what once broke me, I had built something whole. A family, a future, a peace I never thought I deserved, but now finally I let myself keep.